So we're rolling A, we're rolling B, we are rolling sound. Looking back on when you were active on the force and compared to now, do you still feel a kind of transformation happening when you put on your suit? Like, how do you feel when you put on the suit these days?
Proud. And I know that is going to rub some people the wrong way because they think I should be ashamed of the uniform because of what it represents. But I'm proud of it because it represents to me that I serve the public the way they should be served. I didn't even give them the lowest form of police brutality, of police abuse rather, is lip service. That's abuse. And I prided myself on not only not giving anyone lip service, but once I became a supervisor, I made sure that my subordinates were not giving people lip service.
Fantastic. And just so I have a clean lead-in without my voice, can you just say something like, when I put on the suit, I still feel proud, or just some kind of lead-in like that, if you could.
When I put on this suit, I still feel proud.
Perfect. Now that that's out of the way, if you could start, and of course, standard documentary, that was a perfect example. If I ask you a question, you don't have to, but try to not repeat the question back to me.
Include it in.
Yeah, kind of keep it isolated.
Because wait a minute now,
Because I want to use my voice during sit-downs as little as possible.
Okay.
So like if I ask you, when did you join the force?
I joined the force in, gotcha, okay.
Yeah. And that's pretty much the main rule.
Okay.
So if you could start with your name and obviously not exactly where you live, but the area.
My name is Ray Lewis, and I live in upstate New York in the Catskill Mountain region.
How long have you been living here?
Been living here for 13 years.
What brought you up here?
I came up here because I wanted to get away from it all, and that included people. In my part of my career and also in my own neighborhood, in my dealings with people, when you buy something, any interaction with people, unfortunately I started to feel the less I have to deal with people, the better. And so my wife and I bought our own Shangri-La up here, isolated to as much as possible.
You didn't grow up on a farm, right?
No, I grew up in the city. I grew up in a row house. There were 20 houses in a row, all made of brick. And I had your basic blue-collar upbringing.
Born and raised in Philly?
Born and raised in Philly, my career in Philly, and I'm a Philly boy.
How early would you say you got the inclination to join law enforcement, or did you? What brought you into law enforcement is a better question.
What brought me into law enforcement was a very specific incident. In fact, I once counted them. I had 21 jobs before I joined the police department. Some of them were very short. For instance, half a day working with a cement contractor, hauling wheelbarrows of concrete and cement back and forth. And at lunchtime, I had enough. But and others were a couple weeks, so don't get the wrong impression of those 21 jobs. But nevertheless, I knew I had to work with people, because that was the most rewarding. I operated machines, drill press operator. That was boring as can be. I was a salesman. That was rip-off city. I could not live with myself. I sold Fuller Brush door to door. I sold Kirby vacuum cleaners, and I sold life insurance. And all three basically were ripping people off. And I lasted very little in those jobs once I realized what I was really doing. So anyway, I did go to college, majored in psychology, and after college, I only got a bachelor's, and you're not going to get much with that. So I thought, now go get a master's, but I hated studying. I'm not a studier. I did not want to put in another 2 years of hard work and money and realized, even this field is not for me. So after I got my bachelor's, I got a job as a therapist assistant with Dr. John Rosen's Direct Psychoanalytic Institute in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. There I was assigned a patient individually to work with. They were schizophrenics, the people here. And our job was to basically not allow them to escape into their world of schizophrenia. And when they did, we had to bring them back to reality. For instance, if my client was Juan Q. Trapp. His father was chairman of Pan Am at the time. You had to be very wealthy because each patient had a one-to-one assistant therapist. And Juan would say something like, boy, it's a gorgeous day out there. And some people would say, well, Juan, no, it's not, it's raining. But to Juan, that was gorgeous. So you had to be careful what you told them to bring them back in reality. But when Juan would say, look at the sun shining, then you would say, Juan, it might be a beautiful day, but the sun is not shining. You know that, Juan. When we would play chess, he was brilliant. The man was absolutely brilliant. He would make a move, but it was not allowed in chess. And so Juan, you know that is not allowed, and move his piece back. So it was a constant confrontation. This was Dr. John Rosen's basic philosophy when treating schizophrenia, constantly bring them back into reality. I didn't stay around long enough to find out if it worked. I doubt if it did because it hasn't caught on to me nationally. But even with that, after a number of weeks and months, I realized Juan is still the same. I saw no improvement, not rewarding. I then got another job working with teenagers at a home for children with character disorders, meaning the parents could not handle them anymore. Now I think you would call that oppositional defiance syndrome. And I worked with these kids, again, months. And at the end of that period, they were still the same. They still had the same character disorders. So again, that was not fulfilling. So working with people in those two areas of psychology and mental health, I did not find fulfilling. So I got a number of other odd jobs. And one night I was coming out of a bar in a rough section of Philadelphia. And on the other side of the bar I saw two big guys pulling out an individual and started to pound him unmercifully. And I started to run over, and I thought, oh, wait a minute. There's two guys over there. I'm one guy. I'm going to be starting to get pounded. So very quickly, I just ducked down behind a car, and I shouted in the loudest authoritative voice I had, police! And they looked around. They didn't see the police, but they ran. And then I went over and assisted the individual. But I realized if I was the real police, I could have gone over, I could have arrested these thugs, and I could have actually, what if they didn't run when I screamed? What am I going to do? But if I was the real police, I could have went up and saved this guy from further beating. And that made me think, you know what? Number one, the reward was immediate. Number two, it was working with people. Number three, it was helping people. They were three big things to me. I don't want to wait 2 months to get a reward for helping people. I want to feel that immediacy. I want to feel that I did something for another person in a very meaningful, helpful way. Police. So that was the catalyst to starting my career.
And so you went into it with the objection of being a peace officer as opposed to a police officer.
Oh, absolutely. That incident right there, I was helping someone. I was saving them from a severe beating. And there was the incident that propelled me into law enforcement was not where I saw somebody holding up another person and running and me going and catching them and stopping that. It was saving someone, creating the peace.
So tell me about joining law enforcement, because you had a 23-year career?
24-year career.
24-year career. I mean, I'm sure it's a long story, but if you can, take me from rookie to captain.
Well, I started in the police academy, 1981, and I was just like everybody else, basically. I believed in the system, but I saw what they were doing. I saw that they were, quote, breaking down people mentally, meaning we were told that we were terrible on our test scores. They were relating us to other classes, that you may be the lowest class we ever had in these tests that we're giving out. And they broke us down. They tried to tell us that our physical tests, where we would run or lift weights or climb ropes, that we had terrible scores compared to other classes. And as the program progressed, now all of a sudden we were getting better. They were complimenting us more. They were telling us how much we were improving. And it was like, okay, now we have you broken down. We're going to raise you to where you feel good about yourself, you feel good about the system, you feel good about the program, that you had succeeded in this program. And that was quite obvious to me, because I knew we weren't that bad test-wise. I knew we weren't that bad in our physical tests. And so, and plus, perhaps my background in psychology, I saw what was happening. But nevertheless, I then went to out of the academy, I went to a very rough district, 23rd District, North Philadelphia. And that's where most of the rookies went, because in all those bad districts, you have veterans that want to get the hell out. They all have transfers in. And so to accommodate those transfer requests, they send the rookies into those districts and they transfer out the veterans, which is very understandable to me. Seniority system, and it should be that way. So started there and spent 10 years there. And I never put a transfer in. I enjoyed the rough and tumble. I enjoyed, because that's where I felt also most needed by the public. That's where the people were really downtrodden, really oppressed, really fearful for their lives. There were people there that their corners, they had the drug corners, the noise all night long. And these people, they're not shown on the news. A lot of people don't know. They do work. Unfortunately, they go into town and they clean the toilets and the bathrooms of the center city high-rises and the offices of your multimillionaire lawyers and whatnot, but they do work at this labor. And they could not get to sleep. So just in solving a problem like that, getting rid of a drug corner was very rewarding to me. And these people, what I would do is I would invite these people in at roll call to address the officers, to let them know the hardships they were dealing with before, having to go to work dead tired and not being able to sleep tonight, and thanking the officers. You got rid of that crowd. And I so much appreciate it. The reward there, I wanted the officers to receive. Now, one of the ways I did this was very controversial, but I didn't care. I knew you're not going to stop this drug. And so the drug, quote, war on drugs is a joke. It's just a moneymaker for everybody, from the prisons for profit to the judges, the lawyers, and the cops. It's a moneymaker for everybody. And they don't care if you put in young black men and flood the prisons with the poor people. But I knew it's going to happen anywhere. It's going to happen no matter how many arrests you make. You can make as many arrests from one corner as you want, and I guarantee you the next night there'll be another drug dealer there. So what I did is I told them, I personally drove out in my captain's car, in my uniform. I approached, and as soon as I started to approach them, they walked away, very leery. Whoa, we never had a captain come up to us. And then when they realized, wait a minute, the captain does not make arrests. He's not out here to arrest us. He would not be by himself, number one. Number two, he doesn't have the prisoner wagon with him. Number three, he's a captain. They do not make arrests. So after they were instead of leery, they became very quizzical. And they stopped. And I just waved them back in. Guys, I want to talk to you. And slowly they walked back in, and I said, want to deal drugs? How about we make a deal? You know, in the old abandoned industrial area there, right on the outskirts, there's plenty of corners there. You can do your drug deal in there. But just stay away from the residential area. Bam. They were quite happy with that. Now, try to give orders to a cop not to make arrests in the abandoned warehouse area. Oh, you don't want us to do our job. What they're really saying is, oh, you don't want us to make the overtime. Because see, when you make an arrest, very often it's overtime. The court, when you go to court, because the court case comes up when you're off, the court case comes up in the daytime when you're working 4 to 12, or the court case comes up in the daytime when you're working the midnight shift. So that's always overtime. There's also overtime if you make the arrest late in the day, because then you go over your scheduled time off. with all the paperwork that's involved. So when they were saying, oh, you don't want us to make arrests, oh, you don't want us to make the money. Can you imagine that, making money off of arresting people? And that even led down to making arrests just for marijuana, the possession of marijuana. These people were seen as money makers. They were not seen as human beings. So I had some controversy there. But I got ahead of myself. That's his captain. Okay, 10 years as a patrol officer. You have to take a written test to go for sergeant. You have to take an oral test. Now, what made me even want to become a supervisor? Because you have officers 30 years, patrol officer. And I liked patrol, and it was very rewarding to me. But I gradually started to think, you know what? I'm doing a job this way, but if I was a sergeant, I could have influence over these other 20 officers. And I could even have a greater effect on helping people and having a greater effect on making these other 20 officers feel rewarded and finding their job to be very satisfying and fulfilling. So that was a motivation to me. It was never money. My wife and I chose to be child-free, is the way we classify it. We don't classify it as childless. We're not less of anything. We're free of the responsibility to explore other careers and options in life. But anyway, that's what motivated me to become a sergeant. Written test, oral test, then an interview by police commanders. And you pass all these three, then you can get promoted. Oh, I take that back. It's just not passing those three. You have to score in the highest level, meaning you can have a 96 total. They average your written, your and oral scores, and then you got to. And a lot of guys have 95s, 94s, but also other guys have 96s, 97s, and the competition is so tough that they go into the hundredths, 97.56. Well, you'll beat out a guy with 97.51. And then there's preference for veterans, and now they have a couple tenths of a percent for college. So it's a very stiff competition like that. But when I was in my final stage of being interviewed with the commanders, they looked at they have all your paperwork, they know how much sick time you used, how many times you were late, everything about you. And they looked up at me and said, we don't have your transfer requests in. And they send somebody out to get my transfer requests in my personnel file. I said, no, don't do that. I don't have any transfer requests in. And you don't have any transfer requests in. You worked 10 years in this ghetto, and you didn't. And then they said, well, we're going to reward you for that. We commend that. So when I made sergeant, they sent me to a lily white area in northeast Philadelphia, rather affluent. And it was nice of them. I appreciated that. It was a very nice gesture. And because I didn't know anyone. That was really surprising. There was only 2 sergeants that went up to the 7th District from that sergeant class, me and another individual. And you just don't go anywhere without knowing someone. And that's not just Philadelphia, by the way. Not only is that police departments, it's all kind of businesses. Nepotism becomes involved, favoritism. So I really, really respected them for doing that. But they were the least 4 rewarding years of my career. These people didn't need the police up there. So when I made lieutenant, I requested,
Can I?
Sure.
Because it relates to, I think, what I told you about my story living in Northeast LA, where the cops are just looking for something to do. In your 4 years there, did you notice that some officers were more than usual seeking out arrests and seeking something to do?
They were glad there was nothing to do. The cops up in the Northeast, 7th District, never tried to find or make up crime or stop people hoping they have a gun. 7th District was a retirement home, basically, for cops. They were glad it was easy. And as long as they did what they were called to do, I didn't have a problem with that. So that was a very unrewarding 4 years of my career. I requested to go back to the ghetto, so I went back as a lieutenant. I went back to the ghetto in a one district above the 23rd district that I worked. Same kind of neighborhood though when I was lieutenant. Lieutenant there for 4 years. Then when I made captain, I was sent to another very drug-infested area. At the time it was called the Badlands, totally infested with drugs. Abandoned vehicles, burned out vehicles, vehicles that are stolen, joyrided, and then they torch them. And so you had nothing but these black hulks, skeletons of automobiles all over the place. This was the Badlands, but it was also where I felt very needed. And it's where you feel a professional, that I can really do my job here. I can do it in a way that serves the community, and I'm not just a crossing guard, because police at the time were also being used as crossing guards, especially up in the white Northeast. And so that was a good place for me to be. A lot of guys, when they heard I was going to the 25th, sorry to hear that, Ray. Bummer. Listen, you won't be there long, Ray. You'll get out of there. Don't worry about it. Ray, don't you know anybody that maybe could help you out? That's how they felt for me. They felt sorry for me. And there was a lot of problems with the police there too. A lot of drug corruption, because there was so much drug. You have drugs, you're going to have police corruption. And the reason the police see everybody else making money off of this. They see the prisons, the lawyers, the doctors, the Indian chiefs making money off of the drugs. So it's, hey, I'll make money too then. The hell with it. And so it's a joke. So you had to be very careful about police corruption in the 25th. All right, so then I served there, and but all the while then I really did have a dream of I wanted to live two lives basically. I don't believe in an invisible man in the sky, although I was born and raised Christian fundamentalist for 22 years. In college I started to do critical thinking, rational thinking. Does it really make sense? All of this stuff I was taught, and I realized it makes absolutely no sense. To me, believing in the Christian religion as I did was the intellectual equivalent of an adult still believing in Santa Claus. And I realized, no, there's no such thing. Subsequently, I did not have the comfort of believing in, well, there's a life after this, and it's going to last forever, and I'll see all my family, and so this is it. I wanted to maximize my life here on earth, meaning if I can get two lives into this, the better. So I retired early at 51, and my wife and I came up to live on an old farm, almost 200 acres, woodland, pasture. Have a farmer, allow a farmer to use part of the land for corn, hay, pasture for his cows. So it's a very idyllic lifestyle. I have water bodies, ponds, I created for wildlife. I always loved wildlife, always loved animals. Animals never caused me a problem. I just got a lot of enjoyment out of them, and they always appreciated, like cats, well not cats so much, but especially dogs, appreciated affection and attention. So animals were always endearing to me. And a farm life, boy, that's the epitome. And I love nature. I love also the quiet. I don't like trucks and motorcycles and all that noise. I love just to hear the birds, leaves rustling in the autumn. I don't care for a bunch of outside noise. Although, man, I was always at the rock and roll clubs, that's for sure. But I chose to be there. I chose for that noise. I don't like to hear engine noise, let's put it that way.
Did you spend, I guess, your time growing up in Philly and maybe your time on the force, like, did you dream of this? Was this something that you spent your whole career?
Yes. My wife and I, fortunately, she fully agreed and wanted the country farm life also. If she didn't, we would not have been married. That's how strong I wanted it, and she wanted it just as strongly. So that was ideal. And we planned for this for a number of years. We saved for it, and we looked forward to it because we vacationed in the country. During our weeks of vacation from our jobs, we always went to the country, and we always loved it.
Awesome. Did you have a party for your retirement?
No, I did not have a party for my retirement. I'm not a party type of guy. And I always kept my relationships with my officers professional, meaning I never drank with them. I was invited to, oftentimes, this was during sergeant, lieutenant, and captain, but less as you go up. A patrol officer is never going to invite a captain. There's no, let's put it this way, before I arrived at the districts, they felt they don't even know the name of the captain sometimes. The captains were very isolated, in the back door, out the back door. And so there was no relationship between officers and captains. Prior to me getting there, I changed that. I interacted with them, but still they knew you don't invite a captain to drink with you afterwards. And as a sergeant, it's not as distinct difference. So as a sergeant, I got more invitations, but I always denied them. They tried to get me to come to a Super Bowl party. I said, thank you, but no thank you. Because what about the guys that are not at that Super Bowl party? How are they going to interpret me giving a certain assignment to an officer that, yeah, I went to his Super Bowl party? So then the other officer, that's why he got that assignment, that favorable assignment. He's buddies with him. So I did not want that to be a part of my supervision, that I showed favoritism, and it could have very easily been favoritism. So I always maintain a professional distance from my officers.
And you had mentioned, you had touched upon this briefly yesterday, but essentially, I don't know much about Philadelphia cops, but if I had to guess, it would sound like you're the exception to the rule.
I don't want to say I'm the exception to the rule of what Philadelphia cops are like. Put it that strongly. That makes me.
I want you to put yourself on a pedestal, but I mean, maybe compare it to the other behaviors that you had. I'm not asking you to throw anyone under the bus, but
well, let's put it this way. I was not necessarily an exception to the rule of a police officer coming out of the academy. My difference grew as I proceeded my career. But one thing that definitely made me different right away is, wow, I put down in my personnel form where it says religion, I put none. The corporal of that district, immediately he took a liking to me for some reason. And he came out, I remember, and he put his arm around my shoulder, and he put my personnel form on the desk, and he pointed to where I wrote none. And he goes, Ray, you putting down Zen Buddhism is better than none. He knew he says, you'll rot in hell here. You'll never go anywhere once if you put in for transfer and they review your file and see none. So I put down Roman Catholic because that was the basic religion of most of the white cops. So number one, I was different from the very beginning. I'm an atheist. Cops are not atheists. Primarily Roman Catholic, Irish, and Italian. Then you had the blacks, Southern Baptists. Number two, I had no children. Cops, they all have families and children. And then they said, oh boy, it's a shame you can't have children, Ray. How's your wife deal with that or whatever, We're fine. I had a vasectomy. There's no problem here with me. I had a vasectomy. I chose not, having children is a choice. Well, that made a lot of cops resent me. You wouldn't think so, but they did. Because it's like, wait a minute, if I have to deal with a kid crying and screaming 3 o'clock in the morning, if I can't go out at night looking for girls, you can't either. I resent that they didn't tell me that, but that was the kid, because my partner once told me, you know what, those guys, and I used to go down the shore on my days off. Me and some buddies, we rented a place down the shore, Ocean City, New Jersey, and boy, the night I was off, bam. I came back 5 o'clock in the morning to go to roll call on day work. I spent all my time down there, and you don't think those guys resented that? So, I was resented. And then the other thing is, at the time, I was still 6'3", but I was a lot heavier, muscular. I lifted it with weights. Because of the job, I thought there would be a lot of fighting. Wasn't as much fighting as I thought, but I wanted to be physically ready to handle myself. And so I lifted weights. I was 25 pounds heavier than I am now, and that was all muscle. So a lot of these guys saw here, I wish I had the time to work out and be like that. So the fact that I was 6'3", 225 caused some resentment. A lot of these guys had I had a sergeant with a Napoleon complex. He used to have to look up at me like this. There's resentment there. So I had those things against me right away. But then, as I went on in my career, the intellectual part kicked in. That this guy is intellectually different from us. My left-wing politics. Not going for, when people were talking about George W. Bush for president and how, yeah, he supports law enforcement. I said, don't kid yourself, you know? But right away, whoa, this guy's a Democrat. He's a left. No, so intellectually I grew apart gradually also. By reading. And I say to people, don't listen to your news. I mean, don't watch your Fox News. Read your news. It's much more revealing what's really going on if you choose to read, especially independent media, and not just sit there mesmerized by Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity.
Said to me yesterday, you pretty much summed it up in one sentence: the good cops loved me and the bad cops hated me.
The good cops loved me and the bad cops hated me, and that's the way it should be. If the bad cops don't hate you, you're not doing your job. And the good cops loved me because I recognized their good work. I would call officers into my office. They would come in all red-faced. Actually, some of them, you could see the sweat on them. Because in all my career, if you got called into the captain's office, it was one thing: you were being arrested. That there was an internal affairs did an investigation, and they found out that you had committed a crime, and you were arrested in the captain's office. That's the only time an officer went into the captain's office. I would have the police radio on my desk. So not all the time, but sometimes, so I could listen to actually what's going on out in the street. And if I heard an officer, let's say an officer made a car stop. Police radio said 2313, back up officer 2309. And 2315 said, that's all right, radio, I can get that, I'm closer. A little thing like that means a lot. He could have just held out there and not bothered, but he really, hey, I'm closer, I'm available, let me get it. I would call police radio, have 2315 take my office. Guy would come in, oh my God, what did I said, I heard you back up that officer, even when you volunteered to back up that officer, even when you weren't called. That's good police work. That's professional. I appreciate that. Have a nice day. Whew. Guy's on cloud 9. And little things like, oh, letters. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but so do you feel that like just even doing that right there, like let's say that happened the day before, and let's say that guy had a bad night or a bad morning, and maybe he came onto the force and maybe not consciously, but would have maybe taken that out on somebody. You doing that, I mean obviously, but crap, I'm kind of stumbling on my words here, but that's so encouraging to hear, because it's just, if there was more of that, cops would be less pissed off while they're on the force, you know. And again, just that simple recognition, like you did a good thing, and I want you to know that you need to keep doing these good things. I don't know. I mean,
absolutely. I used to walk around the office and occasionally go out in my captain's car, quote, patrolling the officers. And I was trying to catch them doing things right and then rewarding them. One of the things I did that was never, ever done in the police department, and you don't get these letters very often, but occasionally you get a letter from the public, a citizen, saying, I just want you to know that your officer so-and-so did this and that, and I so appreciated it. It meant a whole lot to me and my family, and they signed their name. When I got a letter like that, here's what I did that was totally different. Cops, when you make an arrest for burglary or robbery or rape, that's commended by the department. It's put on a letter of commendation. That is put into a frame given to the officer at roll call, where the officer's called up, the supervisor reads it, and give it to him, handshake, and everybody claps. With a letter from the public, I did the same thing. I went out and I bought frames. I put that letter in a frame. I went to roll call. I called the officer up. They had no idea why I was calling them up, because they had no idea this letter had come into me. I read the letter, shook the hand, clapped, and he went back. I let them know input like this from the community is real community policing. One time, an assistant for a captain I worked with, he came up to me and he gave me a crumpled up letter. And he goes, "Ray, listen, just between you and me, I think you should have this." Captain threw it away. Here was a letter that someone wrote to the captain commending my work. It was a burglary of a home. A woman came home, her house was burglarized, and she was in trauma. And if you've ever had your house burglarized, especially a woman, it's similar, not the same obviously, but it's a little similar to being raped. Someone entered your home, your private domain. You're no longer safe. You no longer feel safe. And of course you get new locks. You get better locks. You still don't feel safe. It's a tremendous violation. She said I put this woman, she said I put her at ease as to the best of my ability in telling her that, number one, they never come back. They got what they wanted. They won't be back. Number two, they won't be back because they know the police are going to be watching out now at this home. Burglars never hit the same home twice. Number three, I told her I'm going to have the crime prevention officer come out to visit you, and they will inspect your windows, your doors, and any possible way somebody could break in easily and give you some advice. And then I checked back with her. I let her know, listen, I told the crime prevention officer, she will be getting in touch with you within the next day or two. If she doesn't, give me a call back. And so she wrote a letter to the captain explaining all that. Captain threw it away. If it wasn't for that assistant, who also took a liking to me, he was another cop. Captains just have different cops come in. And they also have lieutenants and sergeants, by the way, that just work for them. But this was a patrol officer, not a patrol officer, an inside officer. And he gave me that letter. You see, and then when I was also thinking of rising up, I said, that will never, not only will I never throw away a letter like that, I'm going to prioritize it. So that was my style of supervising. The other thing that made me, now as a captain, something that made me unpopular. We're here to serve the public. That is our job. That's what we kind of keep in mind. Captains have, when you make captain, you have your own personal car. The city gives you a car, not your own, but to use, as long as you're on the force. And you have a driver assigned to you, an aide that drives you around. Because you're going to a lot of different meetings. As a captain, you're very much involved. You should be anyway, going to a lot of meetings. I said, I don't need a driver. I'm quite capable of driving myself. We need this individual in patrol, patrolling the streets, serving the public. I don't need him to serve me with a menial job of driving me. I was embarrassed. And it wasn't right. Now, guess what? If I put my driver back into patrol, number one, that driver is pissed. Okay, no, that's a nice position. So now he's going to try to spread rumors about this captain. But guess what? My reputation was so solid already with the officers at that point that they said, hey, we know this guy. You know, we're not buying what you're trying to sell us about him. But other captains, I made it look bad for them. It's like, now, are we going to lose our drivers? Is the commissioner, is the public going to demand that we lose our drivers? That son of a bitch, Lewis. this is going to look bad for us now. I love having a driver. I love the prestige of being driven around. So that did not go well with my peers whatsoever. And one time we had it's called ComStat, stands for Computer Statistics, where each month every captain had to appear in front of the police commissioner and his top deputies. There, the statistics were shown. Your district map was thrown up on a big screen, and they evaluated every aspect of crime in your district for that last month. What went up, what went down, what stayed the same. And then you had to explain, why did crime go up in this area and what were you doing about it? What did you do to bring down this crime of robberies or burglaries? And it was very intense. You were on the hot seat. But anyway, the police commissioner at that time, before he even started on me, he said, Captain Lewis, I will say this before we even start. I got 2 nice complimentary letters about you. One describing you as a white knight that has come into the neighborhood. That's appreciated. So he did acknowledge it, and he acknowledged it in front of everybody. But then again, what the other captains think, Lewis, he's getting these letters. We're not getting those letters. How does that look for us in the eyes of the police commissioner? So there was some animosity there at that level of my peers. Bosses loved me. They never got complaints from the community. And the bosses, they don't want to hear a complaint from the community because then they got to react to it. Subordinates loved me because of the way I treat the good ones. But a lot of the peers, there was resentment. That's okay. I was not in that job to appease my peers.
So what are your thoughts on the thin blue line?
Well, the thin blue line, it has different meanings, by the way. The meaning that is most familiar with people is that this is the line, the police are the line that protects you from safety and harm. And that is the only thing, the police are the only thing that protect you from that harm. I think it's overvalued, that there's that protection. More often than not, the police are reacting to you being a victim of crime and not preventing it. If you want a line between harm and protection, you got to look at, well, why is that possibility of harm there? And the possibility of harm is overwhelmingly comes from the oppressed, the discriminated against, the exploited. They are the people that have to, or put in a position to survive, to, quote, commit a crime against those that have. So during my career, I realized if you want to knock out street crime, go after corporate crime, because it's the corporations, the filthy rich, that are creating the conditions for crime. No doubt about that in my mind. That's what creates crime.
Let's talk about Occupy then. You led me right into it. Yeah, I mean, you had been living your idyllic farm life for a while, right? Just kind of...
Yeah, my wife and I, we were living this Walden-esque lifestyle up here for 8 years. I had cut off myself. We have a TV, but never watch it. Occasionally, I still like sports. I was a sport fanatic growing up. I played all day sports outside, baseball, basketball, football, whatever season it was. And obviously, if you play sports all the time, you're going to watch sports. So occasionally, I will watch some sports. So that's the only use I had of a TV. But other than that, I did not read any papers. I did not follow the news. I wanted to get away from society. I would not classify myself as antisocial, more asocial. And so that's what I was, asocial. I have no friends up here. I don't go drinking with anybody. I don't go doing anything with anyone. This was enough. And having my wife. I don't need other people, but I do need one person in my life. I could not survive without one person. I'm not a total loner. So that enabled me to enjoy this life, being married, having a wife who shared in my enjoyment of the land. So I was living that lifestyle, but I did feel a little sense of I'm not exactly fulfilling a civic responsibility here. There's things going on in the world, I don't know about them, but nevertheless, I should. There was a sense of responsibility, civic responsibility. So she brought her computer up from the city. I did not know a thing about computers really, but she showed me just how to get on the internet for news. And I started to read websites. One was Crooks and Liars by John Amato. Perfect term, perfect label. It was about politicians and corporate America. And on there I read about this thing called the Occupy movement. Occupy movement. And where people were sleeping on tarp tents and on concrete, cold concrete, in a place called Zuccotti Park. Oh, this is interesting. What is this about? And I read where they had a declaration of the occupation, what they stood for. I said, okay, let me see what they stand for in this declaration of the occupation. And I brought that up on the screen. And there were 23 bullet points. As I read each one of them, I realized, well, I agree with that. Totally agree with this one. Whew, they hit the nail right on the head here. After 23, I agreed with every single one of them 100%. Wow. Okay. Boy, oh boy, now I know what they're about. I wish them all the luck in the world. I hope they succeed. Very close to that, within a week, my wife and I watched a documentary called Inside Job. This is a documentary not about the Twin Towers of 9/11. A lot of people think it is. Or even though I feel there's so much more to that than we know, and that it could very easily, more likely than not, have a lot of inside possibilities. Inside Job here is about the financial collapse of 2008 and how our government and the banks were all in collusion to commit crimes and rip off people of their life savings, of their homes. And it was purposefully done, not an accident of the stock market falling. It was purposefully done. And government agencies who were supposed to protect us were working against us. It was so disgusting. I remember getting up and looking at my wife and just shouting, why doesn't somebody do something? And then I walked past the mirror and I saw somebody. And I said, all right. I then realized, you know what, that Occupy movement is about this documentary. This Occupy movement is being disparaged. Fox News is only interviewing those people that they know mainstream America, white America, will not relate to. And therefore, they will not support the Occupy movement. If you start interviewing people with pink hair, nose rings, tattoos all over the body, perhaps inebriated, white America is an Occupy movement. Bunch of jerks, anti-Americans, lazy, dirty. And what did they say? What did Fox News and others say? They need a bad... Newt Gingrich. I even hate to have the word come out of my mouth. When asked what his advice he had for the occupiers was, well, I would advise them to get a bath and get a job. The arrogance of the rich and powerful. So I realized they were being disparaged successfully, that they were not, and the cameras only they didn't zero in and hear the talk of an intellectual or the talk of someone who lost their job, or they didn't listen to interview somebody who lost their homes. They did only zero in on the people who were so frustrated they had to rant and scream. And perhaps they did look a little bit unshoveled. Well, you would too if you had to sleep out like that. And so I realized those bastards disparaging this movement, let them disparage. I have the uniform. I have a uniform with a white shirt. I can help. I have leverage. Although I knew they did not need credibility, I knew I could lend them perceived credibility to them and also to white America. Nothing white America loves more than a white police officer, let alone a captain. They have the utmost respect. Most white people who don't get it. So, all right. Wow. Should I go down? I can go down there. This is a drastic decision to leave totally a diametrically opposed lifestyle now, of leaving a sheltered life for 8 years. And I'm not even sharp mentally after 8 years to get involved in that. I know there's going to be a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, and I'm out of that. I've been out of that for 8 years. My mind is not as sharp, I'm thinking. But I said, okay, well, nevertheless, I have to, I can have when I knew I could have an effect, that is what made me realize I have to go. It would be morally unjust for me not to go when I could have a positive effect. If I thought, well, I'll just be another person in the crowd, I would not have that much effect. I would not have gone. Let's put it this way. I knew I could have a significant effect. Then I started planning. And I started planning. I wanted a sign holder. I was out in the barn making a sign holder that could collapse. I had all kinds of levers on it to get on the train. Because I wanted one sticking way up high, and there's a picture of that. My initial entrance into Zuccotti Park, somebody took a picture of. And it was of the police questioning me, and there's a tall sign, and it said, NYPD, don't be Wall Street mercenaries. So I had that in. It could all come down small. Where are we going to stay? Where am I going to stay? My wife was a tremendous help on the computer trying to find where do I stay, but prices in Manhattan are terribly expensive. I wanted to be close by. Living up here, I didn't care for, I got to get this train and that bus and then this train here and all that hustle and bustle. So I wanted to stay close by, and the cheapest place was a cheap hotel in Harlem. So I said, okay, and that was still $80 a night. And I had planned to go down for a month. So that's $2,400. And then you have all kinds of taxes, and I got to buy my food and all incidentals. But I was ready to make that investment. Well, when I first go into that room, and I'm unpacking my stuff, laying down my suitcase, I smell a strong stench of urine. Whew. And I said, oh boy, this is strong. Let me at least open the windows here. I don't know where this is coming from. So I opened the windows, and I went out to get a bite to eat. I come back, windows wide open. Still a strong stench of urine. Boy, I can't live in this tonight. I can't sleep with this. So I went down to the clerk. I said, I'm sorry, but room 204 has a strong stench of urine. I can't stay in there. And he goes, oh, you're far from the bathroom. And I said, yeah, I am. And it was no private bath. It was a communal bathroom. She says, okay, let me put you closer to the bathroom. I said, well, what does the proximity to the bathroom have to do with it? He goes, well, unfortunately, we have some people here that if you're too far from the bathroom, when they get up at night, they don't want to take that long walk to the bathroom, so they just urinate in their closet. I said, okay. So that was $80 a night, but I still had to deal with that. So I got a room closer to the bathroom, and it did not stink. So I lived there for a month, but after that I said, I'm going to have to find some other. Fortunately, some people were willing to have me utilize their places over my almost year stay down there. You know, they were going on vacation, or they had an extra bedroom, and so I met some wonderful people there. So that's how I lived for almost a year in Occupy. That was, and then I went out every day to Zuccotti Park with a sign. I eventually ended up choosing a sign with the term, to understand us, because there was a lot of misunderstanding, especially the name itself, the Occupy movement. Very interesting name. It caught a lot of attention, but it also left a lot of questions. What do you mean, Occupy movement? And if some people were not even curious enough to really ask us, or they were fearful to ask us, they were timid, and so they went away not knowing what we were about. And it was very important. Communication is extremely important in anything, let alone something like a major movement taking hold in this country. You have to be able to communicate what you're advertising. I thought, what can I best help people understand what we're about? So I know, inside job. Did it for me, it'll do it for them. So the sign I ended up with was, to understand us, watch Inside Job. And then I had on the internet at Vimeo, Vimeo.com. So I made it as easy as possible for them. And here's the effect that at least one individual had. I was talking to a retired fireman. Now, firemen and police have a lot in common. There's a lot of the same blue-collar working type personalities involved. There's a lot of interaction on the job. Every fire, first people that get there are cops. Cops are the first ones on the scene, and then the firemen come, and the cops stay on the scene. We direct traffic, we set up barricades, so there's always a lot of interaction between police and cops. So right away you feel a sense of brotherhood when you meet one. An individual came up to me and he told me he was a retired New York City fireman. And he said, you know, I disagree. I disagree with this movement. I disagree with you putting down our government, corporations. It's the government and corporations that made this country great. And we had almost a half an hour conversation. And it was debate-like in that we disagreed totally, but it was respectful. He never raised his voice. I never raised my voice. He never thought of me disgusting. He never sneered at anything I said, and I respected what he said, because at one time I was him. But anyway, it ended with him saying, well, we're going to have to respectfully disagree. We shook hands, and I said, you know, I appreciate that. You're feeling there, we will. But that's just one thing. Just one thing. Would you please just watch, and I pointed to my sign, Inside Job. He said, yeah, okay, I can do that. About 2 weeks later, same gentleman comes walking towards me, and he had a very solemn look on his face. And he walked up to me, he extended his hand, and all he said was, I'm so sorry. I never knew. And then he walked away. And I just remember saying, don't feel bad. A lot of us were in that position and still are. So I hope other people, you cannot watch that film and not realize that we're being screwed and that major changes have to take place. I mean, it's infected our government. Corporate power and government power are the same thing. Almost every government official is nothing but a ventriloquist dummy. And the ventriloquist is corporate America making the mouth open. That's all it is. And people have to realize that. And so that was the message for me at Occupy. And that's why I was able to continue, and still continue it. Well, my horizons have broadened to other activities such as gay rights, transgender rights, transvestites, marijuana, free marijuana, well, not necessarily free, but free medical marijuana, and also marijuana to anyone who wants to. I say free drugs for anybody, and because the whole drug war is a joke. It's a moneymaker. It's a sham. When I say trillion, I mean trillion. I don't mean million. I don't mean billion. I mean trillion. Take those trillions of dollars, put it into new drug addiction programs that are much more highly effective. Put it into studying the human mind and how drugs affect it, and what perhaps can stop that affection or addiction to drugs. Put it into jobs, put it into drug training, put it into recreation centers, put it into all types of recreation, and put it into ways that people can find worth and meaning in their lives. Because if you have worth and meaning in your life, you don't go to drugs. And the reason I say this is because people think drugs are just a dilemma of the poor, a scourge of the poor. No. Why do you have Hollywood stars dying of drugs and addicted to drugs? I think the most important thing is to have therapy, and it's free for those who can't afford it, and you can pay for it if you're a Hollywood star. To say, hey, okay, you made it this big, you have this much money, you're a businessman, nobody knows you, but you have this much money, but your life is still empty. Let's work on giving your life meaning and making it worthwhile. I think that would knock out 90% of the drug use. And I know why. Alcohol was so prevalent. Alcohol was the choice in the ghetto. And cops would just, because a lot of then you get calls, remove the drunk from the Popeyes, remove the drunk from this bar, remove the drunk, blah. And so cops get pissed off at those constant calls. And you grab the guy, get the hell out of here, don't come back. Why is this guy drunk? Because he cannot stand the reality of his life. And when you realize why he's drunk, you approach that person differently. And the system is at fault. Sure, we have to assume some individual responsibility. I'm not saying we don't. But let's be real here. This man or woman, and it was really, you'd be surprised at the number of women in the ghetto who we got calls for because they were drunk. Because they're human, just like a man. They have no sense of worth in their life. They're worthless. They grew up thinking, hey, blacks are second-class citizens. Not only from birth were blacks and poors. I'm talking about Indians, Asians, whites. It's poor people. They were discriminated against even before they were born. While still in their mother's womb, they were discriminated against because they didn't get the same prenatal health care that your wealthy people get. So you're born at a disadvantage already. And so people grow in the ghetto, they have a very low sense of self-worth. They don't have the right food, nutrients. They did not get educated. Their recreation centers are closed. Their libraries are being closed. They don't have any child care support if they do want to work a minimum wage job, and that's all they have, minimum wage jobs. So they have very low sense of self-worth. They go to alcohol to alleviate that temporarily. So I understand that is where a lot of your problems start, is because of the oppression of the poor, discrimination and exploitation. That's where you have your crime and your problems of society. That's the breeding ground of your problems, oppression.
So when you were arrested at Occupy, was that your first time being arrested?
It was not my first time being arrested. I was arrested prior to being a police officer. Very quickly, I told you I was brainwashed for 20 years in Christian fundamentalism. Subsequently, I went down to a fundamentalist Christian church, Tennessee, Marysville College, where church attendance on Sunday was mandatory. I had just spent the entire summer before that with 3 other guys in Ocean City, New Jersey, and we had a blast. For those 4 months, I got away from going to church every Sunday, Bible study Thursday night, youth fellowship Sunday night, all that constant brainwash I got away from for 4 months. I realized, hey, there's another world. And that also started me on some critical thinking. So when I went down to Marysville, I had that summer between my fundamentalism and this fundamental college. Mandatory church on Sunday, nah. But I didn't want to go home. I had too much of the adventure in me. So I packed a few clothes, put a pack on my back, and went out and hitchhiked out west. And I hopped out there. A lot of times it's easy to get a ride. Sometimes it all depends where you are. And it was very difficult. Sometimes you had to wait a long time. I was waiting a long time in Flagstaff. No, not Flagstaff. I forget the name of Clovis. Clovis, not Arizona. Clovis, New Mexico. I was waiting quite a while. A freight train starts to go very slowly. And I see a couple boxcars with open doors. I say, you know what? What the hell? I go over, I jumped on the freight car. And here I look, and there's like 10 other guys. We used to call them hobos. Boy, there was a scraggly bunch. And I had a bag of apples. And the first thing they said is, you going to share those apples? And I did. And boy, they munched them down. But anyway, so at night, we came into I forget what the town was, but there was what they call a yard bull. And he goes back and forth checking boxcars with a bright light and a big black stick, looking for hobos. And so I got arrested that night. He caught us. We were arrested. So I was arrested. You asked if I was arrested before Occupy. But anyway, for Occupy arrest, I went down my second day at Zuccotti Park. An individual said, will you come and support us at Occupy Wall Street Thursday, November 17th? I'll never forget the date because it was my birthday. But that didn't mean anything to me.
Are you a Scorpio?
Yeah.
Me too. November 1st. Sorry, I had to.
Yeah, sure. So I said, sure, I'm down here to support you guys. You use me any way you want. 7 a.m., he said. I said, well, 7 a.m., I would rather not. Because that means I got to get up even earlier than that to get all ready. But I said, okay, I'll be there. So my whole thing was to go down with a sign and support everybody else to show credibility. And by the way, I hate using that term, show credibility. That is not a term I utilized, but I cannot tell you how many people came up to me and said, thank you, Captain. You give us credibility and legitimacy. That was and everywhere I go, even today in Baltimore, Ferguson, that's what they tell me. And I understand that. But I cringe when they say that because it's like, I don't give you credibility. I'm here because you have credibility. And that's why I go. But they still feel that way, but I understand it. So anyway, I said, yes, I will be there. I am. I have my sign. Whew. A lot of people there that day. Our goal was to shut down Wall Street for one day by having thousands of people surround it so employees could not get in. That's why 7 a.m. There were thousands of us. All of a sudden, I start seeing these young people being dragged by police pass by about within 20 feet of me. And they have the plastic flex cuffs on behind their back, and they're just being dragged one by one by one. I'm saying, wow, they are making a big sacrifice. 2 reasons. November 17th was just 3 days after the police destroyed and brutalized Zuccotti Park. And these people were witnesses to that. So just 3 days afterwards, these young people are willing to risk their personal welfare. Who knows what will happen to them after they get taken out of the cameras? Are they going to get beaten? They were willing to take that risk for what? For the ideals of justice, for everybody. Number 2, what hit me, not only were they willing to risk their personal welfare, they were willing to give up their freedom. They were being arrested. Who knows how long? Would they be arrested for a day, a week, a month? They didn't know. But they were willing to give up their freedom for the goal of justice for everyone. That hit me so strong. I can't just stand here. I'm down here to support these people. I have to support the people that are getting arrested. But still, I thought, wow, that again was, and I'm a planner. I don't do anything spontaneously. I know the fun guys, the girls always love guys that are spontaneous. I'm not. I'm a planner. But that came up, that was beneficial to my career, planning and strategy and tactical maneuvers. But anyway, but the reason I bring that up is because I made the most spontaneous decision of my life. And I thought about it. Whew, oh boy, what do I do? This is, because I was not prepared for it. I did not go down there thinking, there might be some civil disobedience today. Should I be involved in it? That was never in my mind. So this hit me like a brick wall, this decision. And all of the repercussions, well, how long will I be in there? Are they going to steal my badges? And who do I call for bail and all that? I said, to hell with it. And I gave this Spanish reporter my sign. And I think I gave her my phone number. She said, listen, can you take my sign? She said, sure, I'll take it. And so I went and I sat down. Now, with everybody else, the police, they came and they went around me to arrest those behind me. I got up, I went back, sat with the others. Again, they went around me. They went around me 3 times. 3 times I got up and walked and sat down with the other protesters. Then they said, what is this about? What are you doing? And I said, I want you to arrest me. than they did. Now, to this day, I don't know whether they were showing me respect and camaraderie by going around me and not arresting me, which is a distinct possibility, or were they just not wanting to bring more attention to the arrests of the occupiers because they felt, you know what, if we arrest another cop, this is really going to bring attention and validity to the purpose of this demonstration. I don't know which it was, but I sat down there and I was arrested like everyone else, and I distinctly remember, and the quote they use in Time magazine where they put my picture, the quote they use is, walking across that intersection was handcuffed was the proudest moment of my life, because I felt that was the greatest thing that I ever did, to put myself in that position for the sole purpose of justice for all. And then when I was going across that intersection, I actually got goosebumps, because the people, they were just starting to cheer. And one guy in particular, he kept on shouting over and over again, and this was on a video that he took in his voice, and he kept on shouting, "That's a real cop! That's a real cop! That's a real cop! That's a real..." And he just shout, and it was like he was amazed, and it was so meaningful. And I heard it, all the people, and I actually got goosebumps. It was so meaningful to me.
So, disorderly conduct.
Yeah, disorderly conduct, disobeying a police order, and interfering with vehicular traffic. They are the three basic charges when you get arrested for civil disobedience. There is no such charge as committing civil disobedience. No technical charge.
So, let's see here. The whole thing with the FOP came after your settlement, right? Or not the settlement, but
The arrest.
yeah. So, because the whole thing about the FOP, and then not this specific officer, but the other officer, and kind of the double standards, like the fact you got a letter from the pensioner, not the commissioner or anyone else.
Well, I did get a letter from the police commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah, well, his letter's in there. You'll have to read that and see how egregious that is.
Perfect. You want to just talk about that? The response.
About a week later.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I talked over you.
About a week after being arrested at Occupy, I was contacted by my wife saying, "You have some very important letters here that came signed." What's the term for letters that when you?
Certified.
Certified, yes. You have two important letters here that arrived for your Ray, certified. And just so coincidentally, I was coming home that weekend to take care of some other business. I got home and I saw the letter from the Fraternal Order Police. That's my union. And I said, "Oh, wow, they saw what happened to me. They're probably going to say, 'Listen, you need any help, let us know. We're here to help you. We're the union. We know how the system oppresses unions.'" I open it up. Foolish me. Here was a letter from the president of the union, John McNesby, and he states that the pension director, now keep this in mind, there's about 12 members of the FOP board. You have a president, a vice president, treasurer, secretary, and they're all cops. Why was a grievance filed by the pension director? And I soon found out that the pension director filed a grievance against my behavior at Occupy of being arrested in uniform. And something should be done about that. Now, what does a reasonable person conclude if they see the pension director filed a grievance? My pension is in jeopardy. They might want to use my pension against me. Little did they know, the Fraternal Order Police, that I was well aware of the rules and regulations concerning pension. And I realized that there was not a thing they could do. So I absolutely ignored that April 4th date of a grievance hearing. No, that was the second time now. I forget the first date. The second, when I ignored the first, they said you have the next grievance hearing is April 4th, and if you don't show up, we're going to take any and all action we deem necessary. Screw them. I didn't follow up on that one either. But what's interesting is they threatened my pension. There's an officer who I knew when I was working. He was a mounted officer. I won't mention his name, even though he's deceased. I don't want to mention his name due to the fact that he still had surviving members of his family, perhaps. But since he was in mounted, he volunteered at a local stable to help young people learn how to ride safely. And unfortunately, he got involved with a 14-year-old girl, and they had repeated occasions of sex, not just one time. He was sentenced to prison. The FOP knew that. The FOP did not take away his pension. Even though the city policy, they have a regulation that any working employee who is convicted of a felony automatically loses their pension. The FOP ignored that. So here's a child rapist continuing to get his pension while in prison, and they don't bother with it at all. Me, protesting in uniform, oh, let's take away his pension. That'll stop him. Now you have to ask yourself, why? Why was this such a big thing to John McNesby? I'll tell you why. Being the president and vice presidents, there's a whole board that runs for election. Election, that's the term here. Just like any other election, advertising plays a big part. Cops want to be president of the FOP. It's a very powerful position. You go to all these conventions, there's a lot of perks. You're highly thought of, you're highly respected, and there's a lot of perks. I'll say that again. Now, in running for an office, I said advertising is the key. How do you get advertising? What's behind advertising? Money, baby, money. It takes, when you run for president or any election, what do? You send out all these flyers. John McNesby sent out colorful flyers, glossy flyers. You have people you pay to make phone calls. Listen, don't forget to vote on Thursday. You get your pens with Vote McNesby Team, and you buy these by the thousand. Well, where did he get all this money? Not out of his back pocket. If you want to see where he got his money, you look on the back page, and pages in the FOP publication. It's called The Peace Officer. It comes out quarterly. The most expensive ad in that magazine is the back page, glossy color, and it's thicker than the rest of the pages. On the back page of any edition, you can go back years, every edition, the back page advertisement is paid for by a bank. Banks supported advertising for John McNesby's run for president. Now, I'm down at Wall Street protesting against the banks, the evilness, the corruption of banks. Don't you think John McNesby goes, hey, I'll be a good boy. I want that little pat on the head. Good boy, John. You did your job. We don't want this guy getting a big audience. So that's why he sent that letter out to me. And I'm sure the banks called him and gave him an attaboy. Attaboy, John. We knew we had you in our back pocket. You didn't let us down. All right. I lived with that, no problem. The police commissioner. The other letter was from the police commissioner. Incredible letter. He went on. Do you want me to read some of that? You want me to read some of that?
Of the letter?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just
it's
let me.
Right there in that packet, right?
Yeah, right here. Yeah, right here.
Yeah, I was gonna have you read a couple things actually. And again, I apologize, but I do just have to check shots and everything once in a while. So.
Dylan, go ahead. You have to the bathroom. Go ahead.
No, not that. But just if I look away or anything. Hold the roll. If you want to go through that and pick out a couple things that you want to read from, you know your pile better.
Okay.
Because we hit all these points right here, and then I'm going to ask you about this guy. Right
Yeah.
here.
Okay. Tell me when.
Change that card soon. Perfect.
So the second letter from the police commissioner was just a disgrace. It's a disgrace. Here he says, although we support your First Amendment rights, those rights do not extend to the improper and or illegal use of the official uniform of the Philadelphia Police Department. It has come to my attention that you were recently observed improperly wearing an official police department uniform. Be aware that I found this conduct to be disrespectful to all current and former members. First of all, that's a personal opinion, that he found it to be disrespectful. I could care less. His personal opinion has nothing to do with what I do. Okay, that said, be advised that as a retired police captain, you or any other retiree have no authority or license, expressed or implied, to wear the official uniform of the Philadelphia Police Department. Any official badges, including personally owned facsimiles thereof, or to wear, possess, or display the protected official insignia of the Philadelphia Police Department is not allowed. This is your notice to immediately cease and desist wearing, using, or otherwise displaying any official Philadelphia Police Department uniform, badges, or facsimile thereof, or any official department insignia. Be advised that I am prepared to take any and all necessary action. That's egregious. To protect the honor and integrity. Protect the honor and integrity of the Philadelphia Police Department. He's got cops running wild. They just came out with a report last week that the Philadelphia Police Department had more shootings than any other police department in the country for last year. The Justice Department just came out with 91 recommendations that the police department has to put into effect because the policies are wrong, the regulations are wrong, the training is poor. Now, I could understand if Commissioner Charles Ramsey was the police commissioner for only a year. 2 years, I'll give him. 12 years? 12 years. He's got cops running wild. And he tells me he's going to take any and all necessary action. He ought to be looking for taking any and all necessary action against his officers now. First of all, when he says, I'll take any and all, what am I going to do? Find a horse's head in my bed when I wake up? That's any and all action. He does not say, I will take any and all legal action. He does not say, I will take any and all court-sanctioned action. No, he says any and all. Like Captain Lewis is going to, oh, please, I'll stop. I'll never go down there again. I'll never wear the uniform again. He didn't know that Captain Lewis cannot be intimidated. John McNesby did not know that Captain Lewis cannot be intimidated. No. So I found this actually fed. I realized how corrupt is this. Now I'll tell you why. First of all, the police commissioner did not write this personally. He told one of his crony lawyers, put together a letter here scaring the crap out of Lewis, all right, and I'll sign it. Hopefully he read it before he signed it. He might not have. Either way, though, it shows you what a type of person he is. He either read this and agreed with it and signed it, or he did not even bother to read it and signed it. So he doesn't get away with saying, well, I really didn't read it. No, you don't get away with that by saying I didn't read it. Now, why did the police... Oh, here's the thing. I was a little concerned with this letter, although not that much, because of the fact I also did my homework on wearing the uniform before I went down, and he didn't know. I was 99% sure I could wear this uniform, okay? For instance, let's say there's a funeral of a cop, and I live a mile away. I say, hey, instead of driving my car, I'm going to walk to the funeral in my uniform. Would I get arrested? And I'm retired. I'm in the same position I am now. I'm walking. Would I get arrested for wearing my uniform in public? No. You can wear your uniform in public, and there's no law against it. The law people get confused about is impersonating an officer. With impersonation, you have to take an action that makes people believe that you have current police authority. That's the key. You could wear my uniform, and as long as you, with my name, my badge, they could do nothing to you, unless you could walk into a grocery store and spend an hour walking around buying groceries, unless you told somebody, listen, your car is parked illegally out there, you move it now. Oh, now you're impersonating an officer because you took an action of a police authority. I realized I'm not going to take any action of police authority. Very aware of that. The other thing, I said I was 99% sure. To assure me of 100%, and like I said, I'm a planner. Although this was pretty spontaneous to go down there was still some planning. The police department has their own legal law office that handles police legal matters. I called an attorney there, Anthony Brigandi. He just happened, I didn't call him personally, he just happened to answer the phone. And I said, Anthony, my name's Ray Lewis, I'm a retired captain. I have a situation I wanted to get your opinion on. I know it's really off the wall, but I wanted to check with you. And I explained the whole thing, wearing my uniform down there to the protest. And, you know, is there any liability here for me? He goes, wow, I never had this question. I don't want to steer you wrong, Ray. And let me just double check for you. He was away for quite a while, because I can imagine him going back and asking other lawyers. I said, well, I don't know about that either. It's, geez, is there anything we can look up? Is there any? But anyway, he finally came back and goes, Ray, there is nothing wrong with you. It's highly unusual. I never have known it being done, but there's nothing stopping you. But I will say this, Ray, you better be prepared. You're going to receive a hell of a lot of flack. And he said that not to persuade me not to. He actually cared. It was like, but just make sure you know what you're getting into, because you're going to get it. So he said that. I said, I realize that, but thank you very much for the warning. And so I knew from that. And so I knew what I was doing. So anyway, in reading every of these sentences, you cannot do this, it's illegal to do that, it's improper, you don't have authority. And personally, I'm retired. I don't need his authority. I'm retired. I don't need his authority. But anyway, the one thing I was looking for as I read every sentence was him to cite a specific law or statute that I was violating. Like, you are in violation of statute 536.7 of the crime penal code. After I got to the last sentence and he didn't cite any law I was in violation of, I went like this. I got him. Because I knew this was all bluff. Oh, then I went down and there's a picture of me. The papers got a picture of me. I went down right outside the office with two signs. Oh, now here, let's forget. Why was this letter mailed to me by the police commissioner when he knew, and his lawyer knew? You know, there's no law stopping this guy. Why would they put themselves out? Why would the police commissioner allow himself to go out on a limb like this and violate what this is? This is a violation of my constitutional right of free speech. That's what this is. He violated my free speech. He knew that, but he was willing to do it. Why was he willing to do it? That's the question there. We know why John McNesby, the FOP, was willing to do what he did. Why was the police commissioner willing to join in this cabal? Well, the mayor appoints the police commissioner. You have Mayor Nutter, mayor of Philadelphia. He appointed Police Commissioner Ramsey. The commissioner serves at the whim of the mayor. How did Mayor Nutter get elected? You think he got elected because the banks were behind his opponent? Mayor Nutter got elected because the banks were behind him. I'm coming out strongly against the banks. The banks don't like this. Mayor Nutter, you've got a police captain there, retired in uniform, and he's making quite a scene. And he looks very credible. We don't care if these other demonstrators get on TV, but we don't want this guy on TV. Well, what can you do there to help us out, brother? Remember, you're running for re-election, you know? Don't forget that. We want to stay buddies, don't we? Okay, I just want to make sure you remembered. So Mayor Nutter contacts Commissioner Charles Ramsey. Charles, boy, what can you do here? Charles, wanting a little pat on the head, says, I'll take care of it. Instead of having the integrity of saying, listen, I'm a police captain, I'm a police chief, I'm proud of it, I am not going to sacrifice my integrity. Mayor, what he's doing is legal. I will not sacrifice my integrity by writing him a letter violating his constitutional right. He did not say that. He wrote that letter, or is responsible for that letter. Just egregious. It shows you how corrupt the system is. From my own union to the mayor and the police commissioner.
On a final note, tell me about this guy.
Okay. On May Day, a couple years ago, I was in Philadelphia at the request of some organizers, and I was handing out some literature and talking to people, and the paper got a picture of it, and the union said that I should be, John McNesby himself said that he would arrest me. If it was up to him, he would arrest me every time I stepped foot in Philadelphia. Even though the police commissioner, oh, by the way, the police commissioner then came out when he was confronted by me protesting to William Bender of the Philadelphia Inquirer. He said, this guy's protesting out there, and we saw your letter where he wasn't allowed. What are you going to do about it? Well, the police commissioner then admitted there is nothing we can do. He's exercising his constitutional right. Telling you. And so, but anyway, John McNesby, president of the FOP, he, even knowing the commissioner said that, said, I would still arrest him every time he steps foot in Philadelphia. What message does that send to the officers where you can violate a person's constitutional? This is the president of their union, highly respected by all the officers. And he's saying it's okay to violate. How are they going to treat the people, especially in the ghettos? So anyway, there was a big parade of police in Margate, New Jersey, a shore town, where there was some kind of police conference, and a very big contributor to the Philadelphia police, especially I think he bought them some motorcycles for the highway patrol. They allowed him to dress up in full police garb, ride a police motorcycle with a Glock. He was not licensed even to carry that Glock. So they put him in this uniform, had him on a motorcycle with a firearm he had no right to carry, and that was fine. But Ray Lewis in uniform in Philadelphia should be arrested. John McNesby. And when he was called on that by the reporter, wait, here's a picture of, his name was James Binns. He's a lawyer in Philadelphia. And when the reporter asked, wait a minute, here's James Binns riding a motorcycle in full police uniform on a police motorcycle, and he's carrying an illegal Glock. And here's Ray Lewis just in uniform. What's the difference here? And you know what he replied? Well, you have to understand, James Binns gives us money. He makes charitable donations to us. Oh my goodness. Could you be any more blunt? That you're bribed, you're willing to be bribed, you're willing to violate somebody's constitutional rights, and on the other, that's bad enough. On the other hand, you're willing to be bribed to allow this man to illegally carry a Glock. John McNesby, Philadelphia Police, Fraternal Order Police, president.
Gonna change the card on B camera real quick. Perfect timing. How you feeling? Do you want to get up?
Good. It's up. Yeah, I'll get up and grab a little coffee. I have some left.
Just don't forget that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Rolling A, rolling B. Give our sound check.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Perfect. So, we stopped after the fallout from your Occupy activism, and I don't believe you really made any kind of waves until Ferguson, right? Or in terms of your public appearances. So I get, take me from the time coming back from Occupy, maybe decompressing from that, and I don't know, I'm sure you weren't questioning it. I'm sure that it felt like you had made the right decision, but were you at that point maybe looking forward to another reason to get out there? Like, were you waiting for Ferguson when Ferguson happened, essentially?
I was not waiting for Ferguson or any other action to occur. I would be most happy if I did not feel this pulling on my moral sense of justice and could just go back to my previous lifestyle. It is the sense of realizing that I can have an effect that compels me to get involved. It's like you see You're driving a car and you see a child walking around in a toddler in diapers, and you can have an effect of stopping your car and getting out and grabbing that child off of the street. You have to do it. You can't keep on driving. And I feel like I'm a driver of that car. I can have an effect on this movement, bringing it to white America and also showing solidarity with the protesters. So I'm compelled out of a strong sense of moral justice to become involved. But I certainly have no desire for where's my next action. Or if that was the case, I would have stayed a cop.
How did you feel when you heard about the shooting in Ferguson?
It did not surprise me. I mean, those type of shootings have gone on across the country for forever. As long as you've had police, you've had unjust shootings. You've had murdering by police, and that was just another one of them. What bothered me there was that I saw how the police chief, Wilson, was covering this up. He did not come out with any information. He stayed isolated in that building and did not let the public know anything that was going on. But the real thing that hit me was when he finally did come out and have a press conference, what I noticed right away was the people behind him. He had nothing but big, burly law enforcement officers standing behind him. That told me, that one, and it was a still picture, that one picture told me all I needed to know about Chief Wilson. If he would have been really concerned about that community during the 4 or 5 years he was there, if he really had dedication to serving them, he would have had members of the community, black members of the community, who would have called him and said, listen, Chief, we want to be there and support you. We want to tell the audience how you've worked with us over the years, how you've always been fair. We want to let people know that. He had not one black face behind him. He had not one member of the community. Now, I had my first sign in Ferguson. I had 2 different signs. I was there the first time 10 days when I realized there was going to be a cover-up, and then the second time I went out for 11 days when I realized the grand jury was going to cover it up. But the first sign said, Chief Wilson, all we want is the truth. If the truth sets Officer Wilson free, okay. That's all anybody wanted there, the truth. They did not want to convict Officer Wilson if he was innocent. We can live with the truth, but we want the truth. So that was my sign. It was simple. Police Chief Wilson, all we want is the truth. Do you know how many people, young and old, came up to me and said, who is Chief Wilson? They didn't even know who their police chief was. He was in the back door, out the back door chief. He never had community meetings. He never had meetings with the business associations. He never had meetings with the churches. Or you would have had black representatives behind him. And people would have said, oh yeah, Chief Wilson, I know Chief Wilson. He was at this meeting or that meeting we attended. They asked me, who is Chief Wilson? There you go. This was not a chief who was at all cared about the community. And I'm not going too far when I say that to be an effective police officer and police chief, you have to have a true love for the people you serve and to be empathetic to their situation.
I guess you didn't see love or empathy in Ferguson, huh? Well, I mean, you did I'm sure from the civilians, but I mean, as a former police officer especially, how did you feel when you saw people getting pepper sprayed and officer go fuck yourself, pointing his AR-15 at people?
Yeah, there was no surprise there with the way Ferguson treated the people. Ferguson is not an anomaly among police departments. It just what happened here happens in every city in America. It just reached a tipping point here. There was a little bit more of it happening in Ferguson at that point in time. And there was just a little bit more of discrimination and exploitation and oppression. And it only takes a little bit more to be a tipping point where people say enough is enough.
Do you remember any distinct differences between your first and second visit, or were they both pretty much the same?
I did not notice any real distinct differences. other than the difference between my first and second visit. The second visit, people were leery of the outcome because so many leaks were made preparing the public for this decision. And I actually got my plane ticket reserved and hotel reserved before the grand jury came out with their decision because I knew from what was coming out, they are going to cover this up. So there was a distinct suspicion of being covered up. Just a second cover-up. They understood the department covered up the first time. This was going to be a second cover-up. So there was that wariness among the public. And it came true.
Were you hit by like pepper spray or anything, or were you thankfully like out of the zone for most of that?
No, I was not hit by pepper spray, but
or tear gas.
The night they used tear gas, they used it several times, but the one night, I made sure I have no business in any area where there's violence. I'm not there to try to quell any violence. I don't want the police ever to think that, and I don't want the protesters to think. That is not my position there. So I stayed away from any of the violence. But that tear gas, when it's used, that can be carried for quite a ways. So even though I was not in the vicinity of the actual looting, I was in a vicinity where saw from afar the cloud of tear gas and started to move. But the wind moves very quick. Wind can move very quickly with that gas. And it did catch up to me at the outskirts of the area, and I felt the tinging, a slight burning sensation in my eyes that was not bad enough to disable me, though.
What are your thoughts on the language of the unheard, as Martin Luther King referred to it?
Well, Martin Luther King, I don't feel, this is the only place I'll disagree with him. He didn't go far enough when he said rioting is the language of the unheard. Two things here I disagree with him about. And it's only a matter of wording, semantics. But he said it's the language. Rioting is not necessarily a language. It's a screaming. It's hurt. It's tremendous hurt that's been bottled up over the years, a hurt coming from oppression, discrimination, and exploitation. And there's just a venting, and it's screaming. It's not normal dialogue of a language. The second thing about that quote is rioting is the language of the unheard. It's not of the unheard. These people have been heard. Their complaints have been heard. Their complaints about no jobs, no health care, police brutality, they have been heard. They've been ignored. And there's a big difference. Being ignored is a lot worse than not being heard. If you're not being heard, well, let's say, how can we go about making ourselves heard? If you're being ignored, what more can you do? But riot. You'll be heard then.
So riots are the scream of the oppressed and the ignored.
Yes. Now, again, we have to take personal responsibility. In no way, shape, or form my saying that is justified. I'm giving the explanation of rioting, not the justification.
But it's okay for white people to riot over sports teams.
Oh, and they all do. I mean, it's happened frequently, but you don't see that coverage. And here's the thing. You have white people rioting over sports teams, over what significance is it to them, really? Unless they bet money on the game. But other than that, there's no tangible significance of whether their team wins or loses. What's the tangible significance of not being able to get an education, not being able to get a job, not having health care, not having libraries for your kids to go to, not having recreation? So here you have white people rioting over their team losing or winning. There you go. White people will riot, win or lose. Black people, hey man, we don't have jobs. We don't have education. We're being brutalized by our police departments.
Real double standard.
No surprise. No surprise, definitely the black people, minorities, poor people.
So when you heard about Freddie Gray and things uprising in Baltimore, did you think, here we go again? What did you think?
I realized after Ferguson, it's only a matter of time before another one of these arise. Now, due to limited resources, I flew out to Ferguson, stayed there quite a number of days, but Baltimore I could drive down, so that helped make my decision. But also I was tending to decided initially to stay away from it. But then I thought, well, wait a minute, the same things that drove me down to Ferguson, the two reasons I went to Ferguson, those two reasons exist for me to go to Baltimore. One, to show solidarity with the people. Yes, you are being abused. Not only by the police department, but by the system. So I like to show solidarity, and in their words, I like to bring them credibility. So that's one reason I always go. And this is to any event. Second, whether it's gay rights, marijuana legalization, stopping Monsanto with their GMOs, it's always to give credibility to those that are protesting. And the second reason is I try to bring the message to white America. White America controls what goes on in this country. If they want to go against the super rich, they can do it. Because the super rich is not going to control all of white America if they start rebelling. So, but right now, the super rich through the media does control white America. So my message trying to get to white America, here's a white police captain that is saying the police are brutal. The police are wrong in this situation. Open your eyes. Black people, just because we have a black president has not stopped the oppression of black people, has not stopped the discrimination or the exploitation. That's what the media, that's what the super rich want you to believe. Hey, we gave you a black president, there's no more racism. You're just got equal opportunity as anybody else. And then you have these phonies like this Ben Carson, who a Christian fundamentalist who's running for president now and in the GOP platform, who is telling black people that, yes, you have to go to school and pay attention and you can exceed, you know, where your mother and father ended up, and you can be a professional, and you can be a doctor and a lawyer. This man is totally has sold out to the super rich, and he's a disgrace to the black race.
You want to tell me about the girl's coochie burning?
Oh, geez. Well, in Ferguson, when they were using tear gas that night, I got a cab ride into Ferguson, and it was time for me to leave, so I called for the cab to go out. The dispatcher puts out a call saying, we have somebody man in Ferguson at such and such a location looking for a ride back to a certain motel. And she gets back to me and says, I'm sorry, sir, nobody is going to come into Ferguson tonight. And I said, well, yeah, but that was in a different area. I'm not in that area where the riding is. I had actually walked a ways back into a residential area. I said, I'm back here, and I gave the intersection. I said, there's nothing. This is quiet, nothing going on here. And she goes, I'm sorry, sir, but nobody will go near Ferguson. I said, okay, look, I have to get home. I have to get back to my motel. So I said, listen, put it out. I will give the cab driver a $40 tip up front as soon as he picks me up. And besides the fare. And so she doesn't put me on hold. She just goes out, I hear her go out. Okay, everybody, this gentleman is willing to pay $40 to be picked up, $40 tip. Do I have anybody wanting to pick him up? And then one guy gets on, and I hear it because she just like laid the phone down. He goes, $40 ain't worth my fucking life. And well, that was it. I am not getting a cab. So I said, all right, now how do I get out of here? Well, I saw two young females, and I said, excuse me, but for $40, would you mind taking me back to my motel? It's not that far. He says, yeah, sure. Come on. So I give him the $40. We're riding. Then the driver, she goes, wow, that tear gas is really tough. Even my coochie is burning. That was good. They don't hold anything back.
Any funny anecdotes from Baltimore? I mean, it's not really a funny situation, but I mean,
yeah, right, sure. Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. In these type of things, you got to find humor. You have to find humor to keep you sane. So there's nothing wrong with finding humor in these situations. Baltimore. Oh yes, in Baltimore, absolutely. Okay, I had the sign that made the internet big time. A lot of people shared it, and it said, "Rioting is the scream of the oppressed, of the hurt and oppressed." Listen, listen to them. And so a guy sees me from a little distance and goes, he starts yelling and cheering, and he would have done double flips if he could have. And he takes his hat off and throws it down. He goes, I don't believe this. I don't believe this. And he runs up to me. He grabs me. He shakes my hand. I don't believe this. I cannot believe you have. I saw that sign today. And I said, Photoshop. That's a good Photoshop. He could not believe. He said, I swore it was a Photoshop. I can't believe you're a cop and you have this sign. He was so happy that it was not Photoshopped. And he was so shocked that his enthusiasm just blew me away, that he was so happy that he just took for granted. There's no cop that's going to have that sign. Somebody did a good job of photoshopping. So I got a good kick out of that.
Man, any other thoughts on Ferguson, Baltimore? I mean, I have, like I said, I have footage that Alex shot you in Ferguson. I have footage that Alex shot you in Baltimore, so I don't need you to overlap on it too much. Just I want to make sure that anything that you saw or experienced or things that affected you from those two trips, I just want to make sure we get it out.
Yeah, well, one of the things is people took a lot of joy in the indictments of these 6 officers, the protesters, because after that there was still a large crowd at City Hall in Baltimore, the same area they were protesting, and it was somewhat celebratory. They actually had like young girl cheerleaders there and cheering and with chants and whatnot, and that's okay. You have to celebrate these little victories. But my sense was they're not getting the big picture. This is a drop in the bucket. It's really somewhat meaningless, the indictment of these officers, because we're not getting to the root of the problem. And they're looking at this this district attorney getting these indictments, but it's like, that's not the real problem. That's just like a melanoma mole that you just scrape off. You're not getting to that cancer deep down inside. The cancer deep down inside is the white ruling class controlling, keeping everybody oppressed, controlling our police departments. And what I did is I classified these indictments as a man throwing his hungry, starving dog a bone occasionally to keep that dog from attacking his wealth of hoarded food. That's what this is analogous to. The filthy rich threw a bone to the people of Baltimore. Okay, we'll indict these 6 worthless officers. Now that'll keep you at bay for a while. Just like the man with a lot of food will throw his starving dog a bone occasionally to keep that dog from getting his hoarded food. That's all it was. So I felt no sense of celebration.
What's your message to white America?
White America is that you're victims of the super rich. There's no health care. You don't have health care. You don't have appropriate jobs. You're working for minimum wage, many of you. And you're being controlled by sociopaths. People who are billionaires, multiple billions, and they still want to deny you health care as the employer and you the employee. They still get politicians to vote against universal health care. They still give politicians money, which is bribe. I mean, it's purely a bribe. You can't get a better definition of a bribe than the filthy rich giving a politician money, saying, here, vote to keep minimum wage as it is. There's no better definition of a bribe. And so you have these filthy rich billionaires who will make sure that the minimum wage stays where it is. This is white America. This is, and they're taking away vacation time. They're taking away sick time for people. They're devaluing your life. They're taking away your recreation possibility. They're poisoning your air that you breathe through their oil and gas exploration. They're poisoning the water you drink through these things. They are just totally reaping havoc on the earth. And you're victims of this. And even the middle class, who may have a good job, and they may have health care and whatnot, you're destroying the earth for your children. This is not going to be the same earth for their children. And you better start seeing that. And you better start realizing, this is just common sense. If you have somebody who has multiple billions of dollars, they have not one mansion, but several, a mansion in Greece, a mansion here, a mansion in Germany, you name it. And all these mansions have hundreds of rooms and 50, 60 bathrooms. And I'm not exaggerating here. These guys do have those things. And they'll never go in half of these rooms. They'll never utilize the bathrooms. They sit on gold-plated toilet seats. They have everything money can buy. And they're still denying you health care. They're still denying you more than a minimum wage. What kind of person would do that? Would you do that if you had billions and billions of dollars? I'll tell you the type of person that does that. There's a psychological term for it. It's sociopath. Sociopathic people have no sense of remorse, no sense of guilt whatsoever. They can pass a starving child on the street and have a bag of apples, and they won't think twice about giving it to them. They have no remorse. That's why they can make billions of money while people do literally starve and freeze to death, sleep, homelessness. They don't care. They only care about themselves. These are the people that are in power. And the reason they're in power is because the capitalistic system is the perfect system for greed to flourish. No other system in the world allows greed to flourish like our capitalistic system. And the one thing you do not want in any system is to allow greedy people to aspire to these positions of power. But that's what capitalism does. Because when you have greedy people in this power, where are they going to quench? First of all, they'll never quench their thirst for power and money. Never. But where do they continue to get this? From your paycheck, from your health care, from your pension. No such thing as a pension anymore, by the way. When I was growing up, all the men in the block, wherever they worked, they had pensions, and they looked forward to retirement. They all had health care paid for by their employers. No, super rich. No, I want more money. So if I take your health care away, I'll have more money. If I take away your pension, I'll have more money. If I poison your water with gas and oil exploration, I'll have more money. If I destroy your air through pollution of the fumes, I'll have more money. We can't let these people have this power.
What's your message specifically to, let's say, any current officers, be they rookies or chiefs, that have maybe made it this far through the film and aren't convinced?
I would ask them to watch Inside Job, and hopefully about the economic collapse in 2008.
Something a little bit more something that doesn't require them to go do something. A reminder, maybe.
Okay.
A reminder of humanity, because that's like the whole reason you became a police officer. It seems. I'm not trying to put words. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, first, we didn't go into this, but there's a reason why cops are hardened. Obviously, there's a reason for everything. So when you say, why do we have such hardened cops? Why are they so insensitive? Well, there's a reason. Some of them are born with those genes. The initial recruitment stage, before a cop even becomes an officer, before they're even accepted as a cadet, they are given numerous different types of tests. One of them is a personality test. It's called the MMPI, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory Test. Has nothing to do with intelligence. It just measures different aspects of a person's personality. Unfortunately, those in control think that, well, for a cop, we need a hard type of guy. We need a tougher person, even women. We want a personality trait where they're not too sensitive. They're not too compassionate, because this takes a hard-ass person to handle this. So if you score too high on compassion, empathy, sensitivity, you ain't going to make it in this job. So to begin with, they're hiring the wrong type of person. Now, once you get this job, and it happened to me, I was not the same person I was only 1 year later. I was more hardened. And the reason it happens is because a cop's job, more than any other profession, and this is why it creates that brotherhood, because it's so different of a job. You're constantly dealing with people who don't like you, with people who attack you physically, with people with problems, even a traffic ticket. A simple thing like giving a person a traffic ticket, they hate your guts. You just cost them $100, $200. So you can't, there's so many incidents, and your radio, that radio is constantly giving out jobs. It's not giving out jobs. Oh, go to this location. The people want to thank you for this. Oh, go to that location. The people have flowers for you. Go to this location. You got to remove a man who's a domestic abuse, domestic disturbance, man with a gun, man breaking in. So they only deal with problems of people. In Philadelphia and other police communities, I'm sure, in Philadelphia, the saying was there's only two types of people, cops and assholes. That there's a reason, because all they deal with, the people they're giving them problems all the time. It's problems. You have a photographer. He goes to weddings, he goes to birthday parties. He's not dealing with the same type of people. You have a doctor, he has patients come in. Every time a patient might be a pain in the butt and constantly complain, but for the most part, they're friendly people. So you're a painter, you go paint somebody's house, you have chit chat with them, you might take a break, have coffee with them. The interaction is totally different in every other profession but police. And so you can understand why police do get hard. Now there's a partial answer for that. They have to have counseling, and mandatory counseling every 6 months. Because if you just have counseling for them,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
This card just filled
Sure,
out.
sure.
That was all really good. That's what I wanted. Just kind of like the breakdown of the psychology of being a police officer. Cool. This is my 64. We are almost done.
Okay.
Just in time. Beautiful thing about this digital technology, you don't have to take off the film can and
Oh,
respool
yeah.
it and
Oh, I
check
remember seeing that.
check
Sure.
the gate and all that. You just
Jeez. Oh, yes.
pop in a new card.
You son of a gun. Now, is profanity okay on here? Because you
Yes.
said about the coochie and,
Oh, yeah, no,
and,
that-
and fuck.
People are saying fuck.
They're past
and
that. They're
Alvze's
past-
talking about, oh, they called me a fucking nigger. And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not,
Well, even on CNN during the riots, one guy said, these fucking people, and the guy said, oh, well, we apologize for that. But then he went back and
Yeah, when you're live. I mean,
on
what,
CNN. Yeah, yeah,
what are you
yeah.
going to do, you know?
Yeah, right, okay.
No, there's certain, especially it's documentary.
Yeah.
I would rather people be honest. Man, you look so good, Ray.
Oh,
I just want you to let you know.
okay, so I'll finish about the...
This is the psychology.
And the reason I say mandatory is because cops will not go get psychological counseling on their own. They feel it's a weakness and a mental weakness. A cop, and everybody, they rather say, hey, I have this disease or had that disease, Parkinson's, diabetes or whatnot, or instead of saying I have a mental illness. That's taboo, unfortunately, in this country. And cops do not want to show that they have a weak mind or a weak will. So they won't go for counseling. But if it's mandatory, every 6 months, every officer has to go, then you'd be surprised how many cops will break down in a private office of a doctor saying it really has gotten to me, blah, 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 and then they can get this treatment and counseling, continued counseling. And the other thing, when I see a lot of these cops, when they hit somebody unnecessarily and when I see them talk terribly to people, sure there's brutality, but there's also something else I see. Burnout. These cops are burnt out. They're so used to dealing with trouble and being physically attacked. There's no other job where you get physically attacked. Construction worker, plumber. Plumber doesn't walk into a house and, boy, is this guy or woman going to attack me? Cops do. There's not a job you can mention, a police call that, hey, this could be dangerous for me. I don't know how this is going. I hated it. One job I hated was people calling and saying, there's somebody in my basement. I hear somebody in my basement. Oh, the light doesn't work. So you got a flashlight, you go down there with a flashlight, and well, guess what? Now the guy knows where you are holding it. So you obviously hold the flashlight out like that, but they have the drop on you. They have the drop on you. Even a car stop. People don't realize walking up to a car, a cop feels tension because when you stop a car for going through a red light, you have no knowledge of that individual at all. He may be wanted for murder. He may be an escaped prisoner from a life sentence. He may have nothing to lose by killing you. You don't know, or it could be a woman. You don't know if when you're walking up, this guy had a gun here, you can't see, coming up, you can't see his hand, grab the gun, put it here, And as soon as you walk up to the window, there's no way in the world you can combat his having to drop on you, because you cannot go up with a gun. Okay? People would just not tolerate that. And you cannot go up for a gun with a shield on and say, all right, let me see your driver's license, registration, and insurance. Society will not accept that. And I understand that. That's one of the risks the cops take. But you have to understand the cops are dealing with that tension. And sometimes it's not even conscious. It's unconscious. That they don't even realize, damn man, especially at night. I remember stopping 4 guys in a car at 3 o'clock in the morning, a beat up old car, and it matched the description of a robbery of a bar. Just the robbery, the description was just a beat up old car, not a Chevy or whatnot, but still. And it was a lot of old cars there in the neighborhood, so it wasn't not a specific match, but it was enough of a match for me to say, well, what am I doing here? By gun, the bar was held up by gun. Here it is, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was on a very small alley, one way. And they stopped. I got my light on them, but still you can't see that much. And I'm saying, you know what, I'm not walking up to these guys. And, because they're going to have the drop on me. And I called for assistance where I had another car come down the other way so that they could not get out. Then I went over my loudspeaker, get out of your car. Now, people that don't understand work like that, they say, I don't believe it. These cops, they penned me in. I didn't do a thing. Let's say and the guys were innocent, by the way. And they're saying, oh, I didn't deserve this treatment. They don't understand the other side of police work. You could have easily killed the cop walking up on you. That's why he had to take a precaution. He pulled the other car in that way, and he used his loudspeaker instead of walking up to you like a professional officer. That situation. You got to look at the situation. Each situation is different. Now, if this is just out in the daylight and you have 2 or 3 kids in the car, you're not going to try to do the same thing. But people do not understand the psychology of the police officer who's been attacked physically, screamed at, spit at. There's a whole other side that unfortunately I have not been able to present often enough. And I really want to get that message out, because I think if there's an understanding of people, why the police end up like this, then it'll create much better police departments. Number 1, you'll start hiring different people. Number 2, you won't put the emphasis on all this tactical and shooting and brutality. Most of your training in the police academy is with sticks, slapjacks, shooting. It should not be. There was nothing on conflict resolution. How do you de-escalate verbal arguments? That should have been number 1. Verbal. How to de-escalate these type of situations. No. If you run into a situation like that, here's how you use your stick. If you run into that situation, here's how you use your gun. No. Here's how you use your mouth. It was not. So you have to have a total different type of training. But and we have to get counseling for cops, because it's a damn hard job. You just burn out. You burn out, and there's got to be treatment for that.
Fucking bravo. That is exactly what I wanted. And you don't really have to overlap, but there was this attorney that I interviewed like way in the beginning, like first month or 2. And he told me like a really amazing anecdote. I don't know if it'll make it in or not, but essentially he described being a cop, and this was described to him by a officer that he knew personally. He described being a police officer as being a styrofoam cup. You know, you get the styrofoam cup, it's brand new, it holds water. Poke a hole in that cup. You can put tape over it, but there's still going to be a leak. So you can cover that up and it'll still hold water, but the more of those that you get in the cup, the weaker it's going to get.
Good analogy.
So it's, I mean, and you pretty much hit the nail right on the head there. And that's really what I wanted, just kind of like the middle ground.
There's another side. And unfortunately, I have not been able to get that out. And subsequently, I just come off anti-police, police brutality. Police are brutal, and that's not the whole story.
Perfect. That's exactly what I needed. Message to law enforcement. I mean, you covered like solutions essentially. I mean, I guess now we just do like overlaps, because that's like a nice little ending. Tell me about the story in the 80s with the couple that recorded the officer. And then you tried to bring because you said it perfectly in the kitchen. You're like, and I I never brought two people together ever again. Can I just get that again?
Yeah, sure. My first experience with the video and audio filming of police was as a sergeant in the 7th District in Philadelphia. A young couple came in and they told me that they were stopped for speeding by an officer, and he used some unbecoming language towards them. And here they had one, in the beginning the video cameras were quite big, and she had one in her lap while her boyfriend was driving. The officer came up and she clicked on the on button, and even though the video was just of the dark glove box in front of her, there was still audio recording. And they played that for me, and the officer did use very unprofessional and not tolerable language. So I called the officer in, and they wanted to make a complaint. And here's the way you can make a complaint. I showed them the form. I gave them the form. I told them how to fill it out. I said, and they said, well, we don't necessarily want a file a complaint, but if the officer apologized that he knew he did wrong, we'll accept that. So no officer wants a complaint against them. That stays with them their whole career. Now, obviously, 1 or 2 complaints during a number of years is not a problem, because you're going to have people that make complaints just to try to show that they were innocent and that the cop is wrong, the way he treated them and whatnot. So people realize, the upper command realizes you're going to have a complaint or 2. But you don't want to have any unnecessarily, because it's a bad mark on your record. I called the officer and I said, Jim, listen, you stopped a young couple on the boulevard speeding? He goes, yeah. Well, she had a video recorder, and although you're not on video, they caught you on audio where you used some unprofessional, profane language. They're willing just to take an apology. It's up to you. All right? I only feel right that I give you that opportunity. If you don't want to take it, fine. I did tell them how to file a complaint against police, but I thought I'd give you this opportunity. They said that would be enough. And he goes, okay, I'll talk to him. Well, I didn't want to be right in the same room. I thought, let me just stand outside, and I introduced him. Here's Officer Jim here. You go in. Man, within like 15, 20 seconds, I just hear screaming. And officer, you were effing speeding, you know that, and I stopped you. Well, you didn't have to talk to us. Man, I got in there, I separated them. Okay, you know what you have to do. And I never again brought 2 people together to solve a complaint against police. I never gave the person that opportunity. That was the wrong thing. I learned. Don't bring them together.
I got the potato chip story from you yesterday. I don't know, any other stories of Ray Lewis's unconventional policing? In a good way, of course. Where you tried to lead by example.
Yeah, well, on Christmas Eve one night, I distinctly remember, and this was a very poor area the ghetto, abandoned buildings all over the place, boarded up. Buildings that were inhabited, they looked like they were abandoned because they were so broken windows and whatnot, and people sitting around a kerosene heater, a mother and 3 children just sitting around there. This was the Christmas Eve. This is not the way I spent Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve was so enjoyable and exciting, and dreaming of Santa Claus and coming into the house and presents and gifts and the trains. And here's a mother sitting around a kerosene heater with her 3 little children on Christmas Eve. And what can I do? What happened is somebody reported them for burning kerosene heater. It was an abandoned house, and that represents a fire hazard. It does. And so it was, what can I do? I offered to take them to a homeless shelter. She refused. Homeless shelters are not what you think. Women get molested. Children get molested. They don't have enough staff. The facilities are filthy. And you feel degraded. The personnel that does work there treats you as trash. Oftentimes, I don't want to classify everybody that way, but there's a lot of problems with homeless shelters. They're underfunded. They're totally underfunded. So, man, what can I do here to make things a little better here? And now I did not put them out. A little dereliction of duty there, perhaps, but there's always discretion. But what I did is I went to a local 24-hour convenience store that was open on Christmas Eve, and I just bought this $1 junk toys. You know, convenience stores, they have stuff for your auto, they have stuff for this, window cleaner. They have a variety of different stuff, and some of it is cheap little toys. I bought some toys, cheap toys, and I took them in, and I said, here, Santa Claus left you a present outside. Those kids, their eyes and their smiles just were so, and they all jumped up. And like they were, I don't know how they jumped up so fast from their sitting positions. It was like, whoop, just jumped up. And they just came over, and they were just so happy. And they were junk toys. You know, they were nothing really. A convenience store. But to them, it was everything. And a mother stood up, and she just gave me a hug, and she started to have little tears. And the kids just were opening those presents, and I got choked up. That I left. I said, okay, you have a happy Christmas Eve. And so that is a memorable experience for me. And I consider that police work. That's police work.
What would you like people to remember about you?
That I did the best that I could. That I didn't slack away from a duty. I feel you have a duty. If you can do something, if you can have an effect on something, then you have a duty to do it. And I fulfilled my duty.
Man, Ray, I don't know. That's like 2 hours and 15 minutes. Is there anything else we didn't talk about? I mean, I'm going to drive away and think of a million things, but we covered all the bases. We got you going through the academy. Oh, there you go. I had a special request from Alvzie. Remember the Fox 25 video I showed you?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to use it.
Does he know me?
He does.
Okay.
Yeah, he's aware of you very much. Again, you're not involved in the case, and I mean, your only perspective of it is an ancillary manner. So, but if you were to comment on it, that kind of environment where a bunch of cops are away from their families and they're at a convention, they kind of have just carte blanche to do whatever they want. Again, I'm not asking you to be an expert on his case, but he had a special request to get Ray Lewis to comment on his case if possible.
Okay. Now, do you want to lead in with the circumstances and ask for my opinion? You usually like me to state the question you're asking in my answer, but do you want to lead in with that? Because I know there was a bunch of cops in a bar, and he tried to stop them from harassing a table of women, and then they jumped them.
That's pretty much the short version of it. And 2 separate beatings. They were DEA agents, most of them were, and he got trapped in the building by cops. So if he had gotten into a bar brawl with just some regular folks, none of that would have happened. There wouldn't have been a second beating. The building wouldn't have been surrounded by cops. But because it was DEA agents, there were cops involved, he was trapped inside the building. And these guys were off duty. And that was that's one of the main charges he's hitting them with is acting under the color of law. So again, it's tricky for you to comment on it without knowing all the circumstances.
Yeah.
But just kind of that environment.
You want me to explain why cops surrounded the bar? See, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know why they did.
No, not that. Just
the mentality. I can explain the mentality.
Right, the mentality. Like you have these guys away from their, away from accountability, so to speak, and they're just kind of off for the weekend. Well, I mean, I think you even said something like those conferences are a joke, essentially. So keep it within your expertise, certainly. But I guess the kind of environment that would allow something like that to happen in the first place.
Okay. And should I mention his name?
Yeah, Dwayne Alvzie.
How do you spell the last name?
Alves. And you can even
Alves.
Yeah, you can even say the DJ in Cape Cod if you want.
Okay, Alves. Alves. What's his first name?
Dwayne. Dwayne
Alves. The case of Dwayne Alves in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Okay. In reference to the case of Dwayne Alves, Alves, in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, he was a DJ there, and he saw some white women being somewhat harassed by a bunch of DEA officers who were off duty. There was a convention in Cape Cod, DEA being Drug Enforcement Administration. And these officers were in there getting rowdy, having a lot of drinks, and he did not think it was appropriate the way they were talking to these women. So he let them know that maybe he should calm it down a little bit. Well, they resented this a whole lot. This DJ telling these DEA agents what to do.
this black DJ telling these white
Oh.
DEA agents what to do.
There was a black agent telling the white DE agents what to do. Now you have to understand, they already have big egos. And you think cops have big egos. Try these alphabet cops, okay? The CIA, FBI, DEA, they have Secret Service, they have tremendous egos. You have to understand, in law enforcement, egos drive a lot of men. And so here you have somebody being told what to do, and they are the ones that are used to telling people what to do. And when they tell somebody what to do, they expect it like that. And so they actually attacked him according to the individual's testimony, and they beat him severely. And then they beat him a second time, okay, after he got up and tried to escape. And they even other cops were surrounding the bar not to let him escape. I don't have the details of that, but the whole policy, the whole idea behind this is that there's no accountability. These DEA agents, the DEA in Colombia, were having sex with prostitutes supplied to them by the drug cartels, and they knew it. But they know all the drug wars are a joke. So hey, let's make a lot of money off this drug war. Let's have a party. We know it's a joke. So these are the same agents that know they can get away with anything, everything. So they beat this guy DJ up because there's never any accountability. You think there's no accountability among the street cops? I got news for you. There's no accountability of DEA, of FBI, of CIA. There's no accountability of white criminals, rich white corporate criminals. Where's the accountability there? Sure, you have to have accountability of cops, but don't lose focus. Keep the accountability up above. Who's above the cops? But anyway, so these DEA agents, they're used to not having any accountability. And also what you have here, which affects the population at large, it's called diffusion of responsibility. If you just had one cop fight this individual, then he knows, hey, I'm responsible. I am responsible because I'm the sole individual fighting him. But when you have 30, each one of their sense of responsibility drops precipitously. To now they hardly feel responsible at all because they just blend in with this crowd and they have no responsibility. And that happens also in riots, in crowds. Same principle, diffusion of responsibility. The last place you want that to happen, though, is with law enforcement. So a combination of diffusion of responsibility and a total sense of lack of being held accountable. That's why these incidents happen.
Fucking money. That was good. Man. I think that's all of it.
Okay.
I think so.
And Dylan, if you ever, now this French couple, she emails me, she must have emailed me at least 10 times with questions that she forgot to ask, but she would like the answer. So not on camera or anything, but she just wanted the answer. If you have questions that you just need an answer to, freaking call me, email me.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, 10 times. And I told her, just keep them coming. I don't mind at all.
Cool. I think that's everything. Crap.
You want to, I don't know. Did I put any, I don't know if I put any cold beer back in. You want a beer?
I gotta drive. So
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. Good man.
Yeah, no, thank you. I may have some more coffee before we go.
Will do.
Ferguson, Baltimore, recording. I mean, got so much. It's just, there's everybody I interview, I could talk to them for hours, and we could just go back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
Just...
You have. I would not want to have to edit all the amount of work you have to edit.
Yeah.
Damn.
I'm gonna have to have someone lock me in my room. Even if I tell you.
In a padded room.
A padded room, with a little fridge and a little toilet, and just check on me in a couple of months. I should have a film done. Fuck, man. Okay, what do you think's gonna happen to the 6 officers?
I think they'll be at least some of them will be indicted, and that's throwing a bone. And people. Well, some people will say all 6 should have been indicted. Some people will say, well, at least some were indicted, and they'll be happy. They'll see the law works. Nonsense. The law doesn't work because the rich white people are getting away with literally murder with their policies. Well, you have to go after the filthy rich white people. I thought, this is foolish, it was naive of me. When Obama, his inauguration, I actually cried. I said, I never thought I'd live to see this. A black man president of this country. Things are going to change. I expected him to arrest George Bush. I expected to see George Bush, Dick Cheney, and all those Wolfowitz and all those other murderers, torturers, admitted torturers, violating the Geneva Convention and laughing about it. Laughing about it. I so wanted to see them in orange suits and foot shackles and wrist chains. And I thought Obama might just do it. But instead he said, well, we don't want to look back. We want to look forward. You cannot look forward without taking care of the crimes of the past. When you allow crimes of the past to go unpunished, you can't get past that. That's always there. Did he say, well, let's look forward and not worry about the poor black man who steals a car? He didn't say that. He didn't say, let's look forward. No, let's look forward. Let's look past the crimes, the horrendous. Black man stealing a car is not torturing people. Torture is to torture somebody. That's unconscionable. And yet Obama said, no, well, that's in the past. Right then and there I knew he was not the person I thought he was, and he has never failed to disprove me wrong since. Not that I'd rather have Sarah Palin, but he has disappointed. He has disappointed the entire black race. He's made no major changes, but I give credit where credit is due. He did appoint the proper people to the Supreme Court. Romney, if you had him appointing him, no. So he did appoint the proper people, which is a very obviously powerful position. But even that's corrupt. Those five, Scalia, Roberts, they passed Citizens United, where corporations can bribe politicians. The Supreme Court is a joke. Our Supreme Court is corrupt. That's how corrupt this country is. When your Supreme Court is corrupt, bam, the whole system is cancerous.
Final thought, last question. Is it, and again, not putting words in your mouth, but this is something that I've kind of said over the past year. Is it safe to say that slavery was never really abolished, it just changed forms?
Yeah, slavery has changed forms, and Wall Street, they're very smart. They might be sociopaths, but they're very bright. Wall Street just changed, and the filthy rich, they changed the term of plantation owner to CEO. And that sounds a lot nicer. I'm the CEO of the company instead of I'm the plantation owner. But you still have these plantation owners paying minimum wage. So slavery has just taken on a different aspect of we are now working for a CEO instead of a plantation owner.
That's a wrap.
All righty.